Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Career Retrospectives right here on the Super Review Show Network. I am joined by my two great good friends. Just kidding. They're both great friends. Kyle and Mike, what's going on, guys?
Hey, what's up?
Yo.
So glad to have you back and both here once again. Today, as the title of this episode of our show suggests, we are going to be talking about and breaking down Avenged Sevenfold's Life is But a Dream. The most recent album that came out by them, and this is, I think, Kyle's pick that we wanted to touch on, I believe, or Mike's pick. I forget which pick it was, but
Just a new release.
yeah,
No. Kyle's definitely accepting credit for this. Let's give this to Kyle.
Let's not do that. Let's accept it as a group decision.
Group decision. Okay, all right, fair enough.
Fair enough. But so, as we did for the Foo Fighters record last week, we're going to be talking. I'm going to be going first, giving my initial impressions, track listing, the standout tracks, and my overall rating as well. Then, as we'll go to Kyle, then Mike, and we'll go on and so forth. So for me personally, I have never, ever, this might sound like a sin for some people, I've never listened to an Avenged Sevenfold album until this weekend. I know, boo that man, boo. I understand.
Boo them in.
Exactly. As a first-time listener, and I'm going into this conversation by saying I do not hate metal. I actually really like metal quite a bit. I mean, the core four and Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, and Slayer, and like Slipknot. But Avenged Sevenfold, I never truly got into like a lot until I listened to this record, and I was like, oh, this was a very interesting record. To say the least. So it was my first full listen through of any record by them ever. I have to say, when I think of Avenged Sevenfold, I typically think of like really hard hitting guitar. I mean, this is just my me before I listened to this record. Hard hitting guitar, screaming vocals, almost like really hard hitting metal. And then I was taken back and kind of proven wrong by listening to this album and hearing the many different sounds and styles. And at one point I said out loud, I think this is a Nile Rodgers ripoff at one point. I forget what song it was, but it sounded like a Nile Rodgers, like a Daft Punk Get Lucky song for a second. I was really surprised I was thinking that, because I'll get into my track list in a second. But yeah, first time listening to an Avenged Sevenfold record, was I taken back by it? Yes, in many different ways, I guess you could say. It was very unique and different, to say the least, from what I expected to hear, based on my own thoughts and knowledge of going into an Avenged Sevenfold record. So let's talk about the track listing, shall we? This album is 53 minutes long and 21 seconds. And there's only 11 songs, which I was very, I was thinking, 11 songs is probably like a 40 something minute record. Kind of surprised that it was 53 minutes. Some of these songs are so long to me. Like, they just felt long. They're a little bit dragged out. Truthfully, I mean, not to the extent of super long. Like, there's nothing wrong with long songs. We've said
Not
that
like Metallica's last album, that's for sure.
Not like Metallica's last album, exactly. But it's very, my standout tracks. I mean, first things first, when I first started listening to Game Over, I'm gonna be brutally honest with you guys. Listening to this album from start to finish, it was definitely a journey in a very unique direction. Like, so I don't really have specific standout tracks. Like, I have a couple that stand out more than others, but really it was just taken back by all of it, if you will. So I'm just gonna go through each one individually. But Game Over started off, I was like, all right, cool. I was expecting it's gonna start off on a really hard hitting note or something like that. I was expecting to start off like really hard hitting and with drums or guitar or whatever. And it started off with this acoustic guitar, and I was like, what is going on here? And then the change ups and I'm gonna say the word change up a lot through this record. Game Over had some unique change ups, and then it felt that it definitely had a lot of change ups in it. Mattel, I think that's how you say it. I like the toy company Mattel, I guess. That was a very good track. I liked it for what it was worth, but it didn't really like stand out to me. I thought it as much as I thought it was going to, because this one. But though I will say the next track though, Nobody, was kind of what I expected in an Avenged Sevenfold song. It was much more of like a hard hitting guitar song, much more of like what I expected to hear from the get go. We Love You was cringy lyrics to me. Like I'm not sure what to. I'm at one point I said to myself, "What am I listening to again?" Like I was just so like confused a little bit. Like what's going on here? It was very questionable stuff in there, and it was 6 minutes and 15 seconds long. Like We Love You was one of those tracks. I'm like, oh my god! I literally said out loud, and I'm in my car by myself. I'm like, is this going to end? Is this going to end? And then sure enough, I was taken back by Cosmic. Cosmic, I was like falling asleep halfway through it. It was like just so long. I mean, like, again, nothing wrong with long songs. It depends on how you do them. It depends on how you change up or do different styles or whatever. And this styles is another one I'm going to say. This album has a lot of different styles in it. Completely and out of shock, truthfully. But Cosmic was long. I had to pause it at one point and just take a breath. Like I was like, there's so much going on. It's very spacey. It's like a Pink Floydy, like strange cosmic. I hate to rip off the title, but it is a cosmic song. Like I feel like I'd be like on a Mars mission into space with. Like I would literally put that song on. It just sounds like so out there, I guess you could say. But yeah, that was a long song for me. I don't normally get bored with songs, but whenever you get bored with a song or an album, you feel like it tends to drag a little bit. You feel like it tends to be like a little slower at some points, and I felt that a lot through this record, truthfully. Beautiful Morning, kind of back to that like Nobody, We Love, kind of like sort of like back to that Mattel Nobody vibe a little bit. And it was just much shorter. It was 6 minutes, and a whole minute shorter. It was like 6 minutes and 32 seconds long. Not a bad song. I might go back to it actually. Nothing too crazy. The last 4 or 5 songs on the record: Easier, G, Ordinary, Death, and Life Is But a Dream, the piano instrumental outro, which I will get to in 1 second. This was I don't know what to think of this. I really didn't know what to like process. I mean, the album's like started off so long songs, and then the last several songs were short songs. I was very surprised at like how it was like, I don't know. It was just the last 4 songs were just like, what am I listening to? I think it was G. G was the one I was comparing it to Nile Rodgers and Daft Punk's Get Lucky with like the way the guitar was being played. I was in shock. I was like, this is Avenged Sevenfold. I waited my whole life to hear this. Really? I was kind of taken back by it, truthfully. But like, and just calling a song G is like just so like crazy on its own. But because it's just one. I'm like, G, what does it mean? And then I looked at the rest of it, and it said like, Ordinary and Death for Ordinary, and for God for God. I mean, I get that I wasn't sure if they were trying to be trippy or not. I wasn't sure if they were trying to be as like, hey, we're still Avenged Sevenfold, we're still metal, I wasn't sure if they were trying to go for that with like the whole spelling thing here, but it just threw me off a little bit. I'm gonna be honest with you. And then we get to the piano outro of Life Is But a Dream. Yes, it's a title track. For those of you who have listened to us for any period of time, I do love a good title track. I freaking love title tracks. Okay. I mean, some of the best songs of all time have been title tracks, in my opinion. But this one, there's barely any words. It's just piano. And it's like, this is a trip of an album. It starts off with so much guitar, so much, and then you get into like I said, some Nile Rodgers, like guitar licks here and there. And then you ended on a piano instrumental that's 4 minutes and 29 seconds long. I almost want to go up to the lead singer and be like, "Are you okay? Like, you put this out. Are you okay? What's going on? Save your sanity."
You heard his voice on this album. He's not okay, JT.
He's clearly not. He needs help. He needs so much. Send help immediately, YouTube. Send help. Oh my God, scary stuff. Call 911 immediately. Like, good God. I don't know what to think of this at all. But it was just so many questionable decisions, so many just out of the left field, like out of like right field or whatever you want to call it at this point. So much stuff going on, so questionable, and not what I expected at all. I mean, because when I think of Avenged Sevenfold, I actually think of what's their 2013 album. Because I remember that when that came out, I listened to like one or two
Hail to
songs.
the
off
King.
it. Yeah, Hail to the King. I remember listening to like one.
Interesting.
Yeah,
More
I know,
like
right?
fail to the king. To be
Oh,
honest.
no.
More like a Walmart bargain bin Black album.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. I mean,
Dad
because
rock.
I remember the album cover being like out everywhere, and I'm like, oh, there's a Avenged Sevenfold record out, whatever. I remember that, and I was like, all right, whatever. I didn't buy it or whatever. I just heard it on the radio. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. But then I fully listened to this, and I was like, what is going on? Send help, everyone! Send help to the lead singer.
JT, what an unfortunate first listen for you then.
I know. I did this. No, I swear to you, I'm so disappointed. I was actually expecting something a lot better, like for lack of a better word.
Go back, listen to their self-titled or Nightmare or City of Evil.
Okay, I will.
You'll
I will
enjoy
do
it a
that.
lot more.
I'm sure I will, because this was just like a giant mess of like, here, let's do a piano. Literally, it's like this. It's like, oh, guys, let's do one piano outro. Wait, I got it. But before all that, let's put our songs in sequential order that says God for God. Dude, that's a brilliant idea, man. Like, oh my God. I was like, looking back at this and listening to it again today, I'm like, what the hell? So much questionable decisions. Anyways, I digress. So for me, I'm rating this album at a solid like 4 out of 10. Because I was like kind of like surprised. It's not bad. It's just very questionable. It's just very like so many. It's just like so out of place. There's so many things out of order. Like to me, it sounds like they said, here's a bunch of stuff that we have yet to put out. And here's our demo versions of it, or here's our like for the piano instrumental, whatever, right? Here's this or that. Let's just throw it all in one album, call it Life is But a Dream, and let's release it as an album. That's literally what I thought for this was. I'm saying like a 4 out of 10 for this. I'm sorry for all of you fans out there who love Avenged Sevenfold. I'm sure Kyle and Mike love them. I just haven't like dived into them completely. But like, this is what I don't get. It's like it's so much questionable choices. I can't emphasize it enough. Someone stop me. Kyle, talk to me. What do you got?
All right, I'll take it from here.
Thank God.
All right, how long has it been since their last album? I think it came out like the same year, that
2016.
16. Yeah, so was that like Jesus? A long time. I actually thought The Stage was pretty okay. I thought that was one of not their best album, but they kind of went to that like prog metal area on a lot of it, and I thought it was decent. Not my favorite by them. So when I heard they were coming back, I was honestly hoping they'd come back more in line with their original sound. More even like, I don't expect them to go back to like Waking the Fallen or City of Evil. I don't anticipate that ever again. It's just not going to happen. But I was like, even like Nightmare, something like that, I'd be totally cool with that. Even Hail to the King, I'll take a couple tracks from there in that style. When they put out Nobody as that lead single for this, I was like, are you kidding me? Like this is what we're doing here. A watered down version of The Stage type sounds, but I digress. I'll give a tiny spoiler and say that I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I didn't like it. I don't think this is a good album, but I went into this based on the singles thinking I'm going to despise this thing. This thing's going to suck. I don't necessarily think it did. It was in a very odd and hard to define way. I thought it was actually a very consistent album front to back in terms of, yes, there was a lot of different stylistic shifts here and there, but it oddly, in terms of a full album, kind of worked in weird ways. I don't even know if it's in good ways, but it's very consistent. With Game Over being that opener, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, maybe I'm actually wrong about this album. I actually like Game Over quite a bit. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. I really like the that punk influence that comes on like the couple verses in there. I really like that, even though his voice does not sound great on it. which is a problem I have throughout much of this record, is his voice is just not up to what it used to be. I know he's had vocal problems before. It is what it is, but at some point, maybe you kind of got to realize it doesn't sound great anymore. The screams, there are a couple screams here and there throughout the record I thought sounded great. But yeah, those vocals, not the best, brings it down. But I thought that the like change ups, transitions on here worked really well, from those like acoustic parts to the more punk parts to it. It has really nice change ups. I do find in certain parts that it has a bit of more in those punk parts, does have a tiny bit of that City of Evil vibe going on for like split seconds here and there. You can kind of hear that. It comes through a bit and then goes away. So 8 out of 10. Then we get to Mattel, which this seems to be a fan favorite from the album. I kind of disagree. It's one of the better tracks. It's at a 6 out of 10 for me. It's definitely the most classic Avenged Sevenfold sounding track on here. But it's a pretty basic track for them. Like I wouldn't put it anywhere near like the upper tier of their catalog, or I wouldn't put anything from here toward that upper tier, to be honest. I like the addition of the screams being put back in on here, but again, the vocals on this chorus just really grating. Not a fan of that chorus at all. There we go. I already talked about Nobody. That's a 4 out of 10. The vocals on this, when I first heard it, I was like, come on, what are you doing? It's an extremely boring chorus. The melodies aren't there. They're not captivating melodies at all, which is something that shocked me, because that's been one of their consistently great things throughout the years, throughout their entire career. Really he has had great vocal hooks and great vocal melodies, and throughout this whole album, especially this song, it's really lacking. There's not much gripping melodies or any catchy choruses really to keep you in. And then we get to one that me and Mike have discussed at length off the show here. We Love You is by far the worst piece of crap they put out. I hate this song. This is flat out garbage. I don't care who defends this. I've seen people defending this as it's experimental, blah, blah. It doesn't mean it's good. You can be experimental and not be good. Just because something leans into like prog and experimentation doesn't automatically make it good, especially in this case where it sounds like you took 6 different tracks and just smushed them together with no transitions. Those intro vocals for the first like 30-45 seconds are laughable. When I first heard it, I was actually like, what the hell is this? I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
And then from there goes into just some other parts that don't fit. It goes into that like more power, more whatever. That part wouldn't be bad in and of itself if it led to anything, but it never does. The We Love You kind of thing that comes in doesn't work. His vocals on that sound bad. The one thing I like about the song is the heavy part. There's a heavy part in the middle that actually sounds really good. And if they just made a standalone track out of that and like lengthened it a bit, they would have had a good song in just that. But no. So that one's honestly a 2 out of 10. It is my least favorite thing the band has ever put out by far, and the worst thing on this album. Cosmic, completely agree. Way too long. Has a lot of cool aspects to it that I like. The guitar work on this one, very impressive. Probably the best on the album. And that's not a slight to the rest of the guitar work on the album, because that's one thing I can always count on them for, is to have interesting guitar parts, and they delivered on that throughout. They have a cool piano on here that sounds really well. The vocoder effect gives a very spacey vibe, so they really hit that nail on the head. But it's just too long. I can't revisit it just because it doesn't go anywhere really. It just kind of keeps going and going and going. So I gotta go 5 out of 10 on that. Beautiful Morning, kind of feel the same way about this one, but it doesn't have as much going for it as Cosmic did. It has a really cool classic metal riff that I like, but that's really it. That's really the only thing of substance here. Shorter Strong Shorter song and like a better structure would have been much better here. 4 out of 10. Easier. Kind of goes back to that spacey sound a little bit. This one to me is the one, and I found this interesting that JT mentioned this about Cosmic. To me, this is the one that really had that Pink Floyd sound to it, like heavily. It's not a bad song. It's just not, doesn't really do much. It's 5 out of 10 again. Then we get to the trilogy of tracks, which I'll take them or leave them, really. I mean, G, first thing I thought immediately was Primus. Like, it's just huge Primus influence on this one. It's the most, like, I guess, prog that they get on the record. Then it also, though, has pop elements to it, as well as like certain parts. I don't know if anyone else picked up on this. There are certain parts of this one that sound very much like Load era Metallica. So having that weird combination of like that Load era Metallica mixed with like the progressiveness of Primus and then like pop sensibilities, something about it all coming together just doesn't fit properly. Some parts of the song are rough. The vocals, the two vocalists here, whatever, don't go well together. I don't think it sounds great. Verses aren't too bad. It's a 4 out of 10. Ordinary has a cool like disco feel going on. Actually has a pretty cool riff. I wouldn't go back to it. Again, good guitar work, nothing special. 5 out of 10. This whole trilogy is just kind of like an upward slope here. Death, my favorite of the three. It's a cool epic ending to the trilogy of songs, but even then it just sits at like a 6 right along with Mattel, where it's good, but I'm probably not going to go back to it. And we get to Life is But a Dream, which would be decent if it was about 2 minutes long, a nice little piano outro. But no, it's 4.5 minutes. It's long. It's boring. Again, it would be nice, but it overstays its welcome. Nothing really happens. 4 out of 10. So for me, this album had a lot of cool ideas, but it gets smothered really by overindulgence of, well, let's try this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I think someone really probably should have just reined in the band and been like, hey, let's try to focus it down more. Stop doing like all this stuff. Like let's look at Cosmic. That they kind of already did that sound, that whole spacey thing with the stage. A lot of that record had that like cosmic, like spacey feel to it, even down to having Neil deGrasse Tyson give a spoken word interlude there during one of the tracks. Something that they probably could have left out or shortened, or anything. We Love You, someone really should have stopped him on that and just been like, hey, I don't know who produced this album, but production wise, maybe they should have stepped in and said, hey, let's maybe get some less jarring transitions. Let's cut this part of the track. Let's strengthen the vocals here. So overall, I will say it's not as bad as I expected coming off the singles. There are, Game Over, I think, is really solid. There are a couple other tracks that I think are decent, middle of the road. As an album, it's very consistent in what it does. But I mean, for me, at the end of the day, as an Avenged Sevenfold album, as an album altogether, it's a 4.75. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I don't like it. It's definitely more leaning towards bad than anything, but pretty middle of the road. Other than We Love You, I didn't think there was anything like truly offensively bad on it.
Mike, is there any redeeming hope for this album?
Well, as you guys can see, I'm wearing my I Hate It shirt. So, I mean, spoiler alert, not any redeeming qualities here. So I'm pretty well versed with Avenged Sevenfold. I've been listening to them pretty much from the beginning, and then I faded off after their self-titled, but also maybe
their
Nightmare.
Best album.
Yeah, self-titled. Well, that's debatable, sir. We'll debate about that another time. But very solid album for sure. But I faded off after Nightmare. I didn't really listen to the stage or Hail to the King. I kind of came and listened to and cried myself to sleep. But
Hail to the King, I fell off too, to be honest. I heard that and I was like, oh, super disappointing. That was one of the first disappointments the band ever gave me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so coming into this, I had a lot of experience with said band. But yeah, I'll just kind of start from the ground up here. Yeah, I heard Nobody and We Love You first, because of YouTube and the overall kind of like reactors. So those were my first two experiences with the album. So I'll kind of go straight into those. Nobody was really a disappointment. It really drags. It really feels like it's moody, but like the kind of mood that just has no pulse, and really kind of just makes you worry about what's to come. The only thing that elevates this is those cool scales and kind of classical matchup towards the end. The choir that randomly pops up, I roll my eyes at things like this because it feels very kind of like Avenged Sevenfold trying to add an element that no one asked for, and also they themselves are unsure of how to use properly to make sound organic and like part of the song, more so than just, hey, look how like quirky we are, here's a choir, like cool, congrats. But no one asked for that, and no one really believes you know what you're doing. And there lies the problem that kind of comes into this album is, do they really know how to pull this off? Do they really know? What'd you say?
No.
Yeah.
Answer to that is no.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the audience. Yeah, do they really know? It's almost like kids sitting in the room full of legends, and the legends are like, have you heard our grand opuses? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna do it too. And they're like, calm down, relax. Like, you'll figure it out one day. No, we're gonna do it because if we put choirs and we put piano pieces and make it really sound real legitimate, it'll be the same thing, right? Like, no, you actually have to write music and have it blend, not just pop up out of nowhere. Like, you got to know how to use it. You got to have songwriting credits and producers who work with you and say, hey, that doesn't sound, being experimental for the sake of being experimental isn't good. Well, I go back to Kyle on that. So I kind of, take that.
What's interesting about that scenario, that metaphor there you had is they're legends themselves. I would absolutely put them in that category. So that's why I'm always shocked when bands like this who reach that status put something out like this.
Right. Can't
like, that makes me just think that you're surrounded by yes men that are saying like, yeah, you want to do this? Yeah, I'll help you with it. Fine.
Well, the bigger shock is that their record label signed off on this. Like, somebody just said, look, hey, like, we don't feel like you guys, I mean, maybe like you're saying, the fact that they're in that kind of category where they've had such a success allowed them to have this freedom, and ultimately they use that freedom for something that didn't create a work of art, but more so just a work of fart. But anyway, basically that kind of transitions to We Love You. It's just a disaster. It is truly the opposite of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. More so, the parts are greater than the sum of its whole product. It's got cool parts. It's got this little cool part here and this cool part here and this cool part here, but none of them feel like they belong together or are able to be stitched together, and ultimately come off as just our message is more important than our music. We're trying to prove that we have this message about, basically, living in a world full of kind of the consumer, like building and development, but like none of us are aware of like, how that's actually going to benefit us. And ultimately it's just a disaster. It's a 1 out of 10 for me. I went harsh on that. And Nobody was a 3 out of 10 for me. Also went pretty harsh on that. So now we'll come back to the start. Now, after hearing those on YouTube, I kind of come back, start off, okay, Game Over kind of starts off, it's got a really cool opening classical guitar medieval feel to it. I love that. I almost wish Metallica would have done something like this, like straight up out of like, their kind of heydays of like where they love to like include this kind of like creepy kind of like or like sad kind of melodic guitar and then somehow blend it in with some heavy metal. So I'm like, here we go, baby, it's gonna kick in. And then it's just like, all right, you got some punk rock feel, weird rock opera breaks that don't work, just doesn't feel they know what they want. It's a 5 out of 10 for me. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is. And it's just an example of a band who's confused. And ultimately, that confusion just continues to run over this album. We move on to Mattel. M Shadow's voice really terrible here. It really points out, it just points out the fact that this guy's like, he sounds like a grandpa. It's just, he's
not even that old either.
Right. It's a gritty, strained voice. When he screams, I'm not impressed. A lot of people I see these reactors like looking at the camera like, oh my God, he made a scream. Dude, I've heard screamers put him to shame and embarrass him because a guy who had surgery screamed again doesn't mean it's good. It just means he's doing it when he hasn't done it. Doesn't mean it's good. Kind of going back to what Kyle said, like about experimentation just for the sake of it isn't good. Screaming for the sake of it and saying, hey, look, I'm doing it and I haven't done it in a while doesn't mean the scream was great. It just means that for him it was great, which doesn't elevate it. So this was an okay song. Mattel had some weird flowish, flowed into this, these quiet parts, cringy lyrics. This ending is kind of cool. I really like how it all kind of like crescendos. This kind of like this solo over top of some weird digital distorted kind of whatever, but in the end it's really just 4 out of 10 for me. It just parts are not greater than the sum of the whole. It's great parts, but they just don't know how to land the plane. They don't know how to figure out a way to kind of make it all seem like a journey more so than it is just attempts at pulling off like strangeness. And pulling off strangeness is cool, but it doesn't make you cool. It doesn't make you cool. It just means you're doing it because you're trying to be progressive. So then we move on to as we move past those, we go to Cosmic. Not a bad song. It's got some interesting instrumentation. I actually felt like this was the high of the album at this point. Really not helped by the Daft Punk syncoder, whatever the synth voice thing. I just felt like it's a roll of my eyes moment, but I'm okay with it. It's just like, has Avenged Sevenfold ever used a voice synthesizer in any of their albums? I don't know about The Stage. I really didn't listen to that album, but maybe they did. But like, when you hear that, you realize, my God, this band is desperate to just try and break the boundary of like musical kind of like freshness and comes off like trying too hard. But I mean, it's not a bad song. It's actually 6 out of 10 for me. The highlight of the album so far. So, which I know you guys said was boring.
Like I actually had it at first at a 6 on first listen, and then just over time with repeated listens, it just went down.
Yeah, and I could see that.
Killed it.
I could see that. I didn't. This was a tough album to get through. I'll be honest with you. I listened to the first 4 songs a bunch of times because they were the only thing that truly made me feel like Avenged Sevenfold was still alive. Yeah. Other than that, at this point, this is when we literally, the plane is crashing. It's like, do we know what the freaking hell we're doing? No. Are we going to start going off into crazy directions like funk and jazzy pianos and crazy things that just are a desperate claw to find identity? Yes. And that's just kind of where it goes after this point. We hit A Beautiful Morning. It's just, I like the moodiness of this. I like the Alice in Chains feel of this, the progressive flair of this, but then the psychedelic stuff that just kind of hits after that initial really just, once again, it's a jarring strike out of like what they started with and what they're going towards. Like you said, they just pop up random parts. It just doesn't complement the rest of the Strange song. It's a 3 out of 10. Then we go to Easier. Opening riff kind of reminds me of something you'd hear from Load, Metallica, or Pantera, weirdly enough. That just that repetitive kind of riff, but it kind of creates a cool groove. But other than that, it's well, there's some nice melodies they play with, improvisational way. But this kind of feels more like a Fish jam than it does an Avenged Sevenfold song. Is it a bad song? No. Does it belong on this record and make sense thematically? No. It's just a band, an identity crisis band trying to prove that they are legitimate and they're not their former self. And I really feel like that's where we go from here. This whole the God thing, God. They've always been a band who struggled with the concept of God and the and that kind of impact on their thoughts about things. And the first song, it's just cringe, absolutely cringe, lyrically cringe, vocally the funky parts missing the mark entirely, strange deep groan vocals, almost made me think of Five Finger Death Punch, were coming in as like a freaking like a feature. And it's just
Don't
a
give
1
them
out of
ideas.
10.
It's gonna happen.
I please, God, no, God, like the cut to like the guy
They're
from The
gonna take him
Office.
on a co-headliner now, and then it's gonna be G featuring Ivan Moody, Five Finger Death Punch.
No,
That's the next
Kyle,
single.
stop it, Kyle. Like, I honestly, like, I want that. No, God, no, like from The Office, and then we just have ordinary funkadelic Daft Punk's inspired kind of song. Not a bad song. This it doesn't fit in the general like expectation of Avenged Sevenfold, but it's a 5 out of 10. I don't hate it. I wouldn't, put it on a playlist, but I wouldn't turn it off. Like, it's actually one of the few more straightforward songs where what you hear is what you expect. What's coming next is what you expect. There's no like, look at, we're crazy, we're crazy. Like, relax, Avenged Sevenfold. We know you're crazy and you do lots of crazy change-ups, but like try writing a song first that's actually good, then you can do change ups and we'll respect it. Then we go to Death. It's just, once again, same thing, dynamic, stylistic, but overall falls flat. It's a 1 out of 10. And then Life Is But a Dream. This is actually one of my favorite songs on the album. Like, I know, shocker, I love piano pieces, I love classical music. I did not at any point feel this song was too long. I actually felt like taking it for what it is, an instrumental and a piano piece that's actually trying to imitate a real piano piece, not just, hey, let me write a melody and play the same melody throughout the whole thing. There's movements. There's actually like you would write like an orchestral piece. There's movements with a piano, and it actually does some pretty cool things. 6 out of 10. So the two boring songs on this album, according to you guys, Cosmic and Life But a Dream, are my standout tracks, which is hilarious because does Life Is But a Dream really belong as a Avenged Sevenfold song? Not really, but I like what they're doing here. That's it. I don't like it as an Avenged Sevenfold song. I like it as a song untitled by an artist who isn't Avenged Sevenfold, writing a piano piece. If that sounds like the clear like non-endorsement for this album, it is. The one that sounds least like themselves is the best. Is like, when I say least like themselves, I mean doesn't have any singing or anything recognizable to identify it by, is the one that is the best. So,
and I think that you bring up a great point though with that, in that this is one of those examples of an album where I'm all up for bands changing, evolving, all of that.
Yeah.
To an extent, though, once you get to a point where you become an unrecognizable version of yourself, it better to be a side project. Like, if they threw this album out as a side project, I still wouldn't like it. I don't know if my opinion on it would change that much, but at least it wouldn't have that name behind it and that career behind it to set up different set of expectations. Because when I go into this thinking this is an Avenged Sevenfold album, I'm going into it thinking, we're going to get these big, like, epic tracks with great choruses and everything, and most of the choruses on this were garbage.
Yes, exactly. And what I wrote in my notes is Avenged Sevenfold, Life Is But a Dream, parentheses, the album that should be been a side project and feels like a cry for legitimacy and self-identity. So ultimately how I felt, the ending with the rating, he says, I love cheese, I love bread, and I love sauce. But you know what I like better? Pizza. Okay. So, you can put all these little parts and they're nice and they sound cool for the time that they happen, but they ultimately lead to nothing and are kind of alone in their own kind of quest to like pull them off and make you remember them. They need to be found a way to blend together, and like I said, it's a desperate plea to find the identity, legitimacy. Like, look how diverse we are. Ends up feeling really unaware how to pull it off correctly. It's a rock opera that doesn't pull off a rock opera. It's a funky, progressive, improvisational display that feels like someone who doesn't really know how to pull that off, or at least know how to make it sound like it belongs.
And they didn't
Grasping at
fully
straws.
commit to any of that.
No,
I think
never
that's another
committed,
problem
exactly.
is they lean slightly into things for a track or portions of a track, and then they shy away from it a couple minutes later. If you gave me a whole album of funk tracks, I'd respect it a hell of a lot more than what we got.
Exactly. Right. Some cohesive kind of theme, a thematical kind of destination. And ultimately, they were very vocal about how they didn't care if their fan base cared, like
it's going to be a bad album when the band starts saying that.
Yeah, and like, I'm all for doing what you want to do. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for about doing what you want to do, but when you have a name like Avenged Sevenfold, doing what you want to do goes under a side project. Doing what you want to do and giving the fans what they want from your previous work is called being a non-selfish artist who wants to the band itself is a living thing. Avenged Sevenfold is a living thing. You never force a living thing that's doing what it's done for it the whole time to do something else because you want it to. You continue the sound or you kill it and you go off to make a different band. The band needed to sound a certain way and they refused, and ultimately crapped all over their fans and their expectations, and really caused the division. And for that division and that lack of ability to know that they should make this a side project and this should have been something that they wanted to do to experiment and not and reward their fans for waiting for the time that they did with an album that they deserved. It's a 3 out of 10. It doesn't belong in this discography. It doesn't belong in Avenged Sevenfold's catalog, and it really is, in my opinion, the beginning of the end, unless they wake up and decide to, give their fan like their album concert attendance is low or whatever, and their streams are low, and they're just like, okay, we better go back to our previous self before we like try this out too long.
Based on their attitude, or at least M Shadow's attitude for the past couple of years, I don't see that happening.
Right.
Everything with them lately is like the crypto and chat GPT and all that, and it's just AI. They did oh my god, NFTs and all that, and then he comes out with this record and it's all, I don't care what my fans think. I hate that. Exactly. That's when you say you don't care what your fans think, that's so like disrespectful. I mean, you mentioned the division, and this is one of those rare times where I've gone and looked at like the comments on like promotional things for the record.
Right.
And most of the time, even if there's a bad album, so many times you'll see, like, let's use Def Leppard's last album, for example. We all agreed that was a pretty bad record. But you go on their Facebook page or their YouTube, and their fans are all loving it. They're all praising it. But for this record, you go on to Avenged Sevenfold's own page, their own postings about it. And it's either people loving it, which is a much smaller minority, or people hating it. I've not seen anyone in between. It's
which I feel like maybe they just screen their comments. They're like, all right, delete that. All right, hey, look, everybody, we are awesome. And every other comment that hates it is, which, I don't know. Yeah, I want to see a real, and also, and the award for the worst album cover goes to Avenged Sevenfold with like my child scribbled crayons on a frick or a marker on like the original album cover, and we're so edgy that we have an album cover that looks avant-garde and crazy
It's a
like
shame
this.
because I think they did a couple different covers
Yeah,
for like different, like record stores, like independent record stores had their own,
yeah.
and they looked better than the official cover.
I really want to buy a beautiful artistic vinyl with scribbles of marker all over it,
Half
and
the bottom of the record.
yeah, I just really want to spend the extra money on that art so I can cherish what I can't see. Oh, because it's really like a mind screw to think there's writing behind that and you can't see it. That's the art, guys. You just don't get it. You don't get it because you're not artistic enough. You don't get what you can't see is there. Come at me, bro. Fight me.
You just don't understand the art of G.
Yes, they should like a cult. They should start a cult. We are the art of G. And
That's
man, you don't get it. I actually saw that under the comments of the YouTube. You don't get it. You just don't get it.
Everyone's argument.
Okay?
That's everyone's argument. And I get it. Trust me, I get it. It still sucks.
I get it. It's so cringe and so like intentionally artistic that it comes off a fail.
And I think the worst part for me is I can't tell whether or not they're not fully leaning into like the prog thing or like not fully leaning into one sound here because they can't pull it off, or if they're just too scared to do it.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I think bothers me the most.
The answer is yes.
I don't know, because there are parts where I think that they could like pull off a sound, but then they just stop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this was real tough to listen to. When I got to 5 songs in, oh my god, I couldn't. It was so tough, man. I kept stopping at 5, and it's like I can't do this. Like I can't. Like I had to call my counselor. You get a special, appointment. Yeah.
I'm calling the police.
Calling the police on this. This is a crime, art police.
Art police.
So yeah, man.
Your art sucks.
I'm the villain, and I don't care because this is a villainous need moment.
This needed to suck almost. You're probably saying to yourself, I can't wait to share my opinions. I know it's gonna be terrible.
Want to rip this one, and I hate ripping something. Like it's easier. I understand it's easier to destroy something than build something up. Like it's so easy to rip something to down, but it's hard. It's better to like find something good in it and say, hey, I'm going to cling to this. But sometimes you have to take the entire body of work, the entire artist history, the entire artist comments to media, the entire picture. You have to take that whole picture, and sometimes you have to gather your conclusions with that rather than just listening to it at face value. Listening to it at face value, you feel the confusion, but hearing the comments and the body of work that came before it, you really feel the confusion. So if you don't know Avenged Sevenfold, this might come off quirky and a journey, as a lot of these people said. Oh, it's a real trip, it's a real journey. But when you see what they've done previously, and you see this now, then you feel less of that, and you feel more of confusion and inability to be able to execute the way it really should be. So yeah.
And I am one of those people. Like I said from the get-go, I never have listened to an Avenged Sevenfold record until this record. I mean, I knew who they were and whatnot, but I just never listened to them. And I was like, oh God, what is going on? Like, as you clearly have heard. Anything else, guys? Are we all set?
That's it. We're set. Rate it. No, we already did rate it.
We already rated it. Mike is the villain tonight for giving it a 3 out of what? 3 out of 10, you said, right? I hate it.
3 out of 3, Mike.
3 out of 3. Hey, shut up, Kyle. Don't you steer me back into like freaking congratulations here or whatever.
Oh my God.
No, well, absolutely not.
Listen up, everyone. We want to thank you all for watching, listening, however you enjoyed us. Then obviously this is a very step in a very strange direction for Avenged Sevenfold to move forward with. I'm almost curious.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say now that because we're doing the Bring Me the Horizon discography breakdown, not this next week, but the next week, do we want to spin the wheel before we go as the next song, or do we have another?
I'm down to spinning the wheel.
Sure.
Right,
so
yeah,
so
spin the
no,
bottle?
we're gonna spin the wheel this week, and then not next week, but the week after, the week of July 4th. Actually, we're gonna be doing a career discography, Mike, breakdown of Bring Me the Horizon. So, yeah, Kyle, why don't you spin that wheel, my guy?
Cow.
How many are left?
Right.
2 on there?
Cow. Can you do it while you're cow? Cow.
Maybe. Hold on.
Kyle is currently spinning the wheel. Just letting you guys know.
As a cow. Cow the cow will spin the wheel. And these colors look like Panera bread. Is anyone else seeing this, or is that just? Does that
You
make
are
anything
making
Panera
me
bread?
hungry.
Yes,
Yo!
yes. This is not sponsored by Panera bread. Strike
we
that from
could
your
be.
mind.
But we
Panera
we
Bread,
could
shout
be.
out, just sponsor us. Panera Bread, let's go.
Yeah, I want a $14 sandwich too.
Dude, I want a
Okay.
sandwich too.
All right. My God.
Wow, twice in a row.
Hey.
Twice in a row. My pick was the last one on the wheel.
Wow. So what is this one called? It's called Beardfish?
Beardfish. It's comfort zone. Plus
Beardfish
whatever
comfort
the
zone.
numbers are. Yeah.
Are you sure it's not called Beerfish? No, I'm just kidding.
Beerfish.
Oh, Beerfish.
No.
Hey, it's Cowl, everyone. He's back.
Owl.
He looks like
Cowl's
he's dead.
having some kind of a seizure, I believe.
He's
I
having
don't
an
know.
aneurysm over there. What the hell?
Yeah, yes. Don't forget, don't bite your tongue. You gotta, yeah. You just...
Oh my God, this is so stupid. Anyways, we want to thank you all for watching, listening, however you enjoyed us tonight. As you can see, this record was very much a hot mess, as some people might say.
We wanted this review to feel like a hot mess. So look, we're changing up things, and we're,
Exactly. But thanks so much for watching, listening, however you enjoy us tonight. Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, simply The Super Review Show. And don't forget to find on Instagram, Facebook. It's not file. I'm sorry. We're not filing any complaints here. We're talking about the Q&A podcast by this guy down here.
Yeah.
Any updates for anyone, or?
Yep. Season finale just came out a couple days. Last week.
Nice.
Awesome.
So
We'll be back
move on
about a
over to
month.
that channel.
Right on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever else, Google Podcasts.
Wherever you get your podcast, you can find the Q&A podcast. Their season finale just came out. Kyle does a great job over there. We cannot deny the Cowl. He does such a great job. So yeah.
Yes.
But thank you all for watching, listening. So stay tuned for next week for another Beer Fish, whatever it's called again. We're gonna go do that album next week, and we'll see you later. So stay safe, take care.